Yeah, so yeah, today I'm going to talk about my experience, my journey of building an engineering team to build a SaaS product in Hong Kong. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm the co-founder of SLT, and as a part-time, as a volunteer, I'm also sitting on the assessment panel of the ESS, that is the government funding for startup. And before my life as a startup co-founder, I was in Silicon Valley. I got my bachelor and master's degree um, in computer science at Stanford, and then I stayed at Silicon Valley for 8 years, mainly at Google. So first, let me tell you what is S-loyalty. So that means, so I'm going to talk about my experience in S-loyalty. So um, S-loyalty is a B2B SaaS web app. So do you understand what I'm talking about? Yeah, yes. Well, I just want to know more about the audience so that I can adjust, the terminology that I'm using. So yes, SaaS, that is software as a service, right? So that means my application, it is over the cloud, it is over the web. Our user, they use our application over a browser. And the space that we are in is B2B. So our customers, they are business. Specifically, they are e-commerce merchants. And we are providing loyalty program management system for them. And luckily, right now we are serving thousands of merchants around the world, mainly in the US. About like 70% of our customer base there in the US. And then the rest, the rest 30%, that they are also in English-speaking countries, let's say in UK, in Australia, in New Zealand. And we are based in Tsim Sha Tsui. So this is the number that I pulled from the database. That is the number of the customers that we are, the number of shoppers that we are managing across thousands of merchants. So it is not a very big number, but it is big enough that we need to apply some engineering practice to the problem that we are trying to solve. So we have been doing S-loyalty for 3 years. And luckily, first of all, for all the startup, the first thing that you need to do is to build a MVP, right? The minimal viable product. And after that, we got adoption very quickly. Many real merchants, e-commerce stores, they like our solution and they pay to use our solution. And then after the MVP, we need to do a lot of things. We need to build new features. We need to scale the infrastructure. So these two things, it is no-brainer, right? You need to keep, improving your product, adding new features, scale your infrastructure to serve more merchants. But there are many other things, we also need to do. And we also need to do really well so that we can compete in the marketplace. For example, monitor our service. So we as a SaaS company, we need to provide our solution over the web, and we need to keep our service. 24 hours, 7 days, right? So we need to monitor our service. Another thing that is very unique, to the space that we are working in is audit our data. So we are a loyalty program. We need to get data from various sources. And also, we apply our logic, to those data. We and our customers, our merchants, as well as their shoppers, they have a really high expectation, about the quality and the accuracy of the data. So that is another thing. And the third thing that I want to emphasize is deprecate obsolete features. Not many startups, talk about that, but actually that is very important when you try to iterate your product, because frankly, when we try to come up with the new features that we want to build, We look at the data, but a lot of the time, we need to make guesses. We bet that, if we introduce this new feature, our merchants will find it useful. But at the end, we need to look at the adoption data, and then sometimes, we make a wrong guess, and we need to deprecate obsolete features. And actually, it is very important to deprecate obsolete features as soon as possible, because the later that you deprecate it, the more burden, the more liability. You need to accumulate, and then it will be much harder, and you need to pay higher costs to get rid of those features. And one thing that I want to emphasize in this talk is Hong Kong is very different from Silicon Valley. So over the web, from TechCrunch, or Business Insider, or many other, sources. On the web, you can find the top 10 tips of running a startup, blah blah blah, or the best practice of doing certain things, or building an engineering team. But I would say all those articles, they are good articles, right? But they are making certain assumptions. And if those assumptions are invalid, let's say invalid in Hong Kong, then it may kill your company if you follow those advices. So let me talk about the limitations in Hong Kong compared to Silicon Valley. So compared to my experience, my experience in Silicon Valley for 8 years. So one thing is that most students prefer medicine, finance, and law to computer science. And unlike Silicon Valley, unlike Stanford, in Stanford right now, computer science is the most popular major. About 20% of the students at school choose computer science as the major. And computer science is also the most popular major for women in Stanford. So that is very different. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's the case. I prepare for another talk about education, and I find the statistics, and I find it surprising. And not only in Silicon Valley, but also in China, in Beijing. Actually, when I was in Google, I worked in the China office for 2 years as well. And actually, in Beijing, Tsinghua and in Tsinghua and Beijing University, Peking University, computer science or engineering school in general, they are also, the hardest departments to get in. And another, another situation in Hong Kong is that even if the students, study computer science at university, most of them, they don't choose startup. They don't choose to build product. Most of them, they join the IT department of the banks and corporate. But the experience that they gained at those places, I would say they are not very applicable, in our startup world. And another very important limitation in Hong Kong is that there are very few R&D divisions of global software companies in Hong Kong. Well, you heard about Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, these companies, these great companies, they have offices in Hong Kong, but all of them, they only have sales office in Hong Kong. And the skill sets that the staff in those branches in Hong Kong, they have, what they have is also very different from the skill set required to build a product in Hong Kong. So given all these limitations in Hong Kong, when I run the engineering team of my startup, I make one big decision. The decision is we need to keep it simple. Okay, so what I mean by keep it simple is, for example, we use only one programming language, Python, to in most of our application or logic. The reason is that As an engineering team, as a company, we need to accumulate our experience, right? And if everybody is using Python, then we can share about, what we have learned, in the Python world, and then we can, build our capability around this programming language. The second thing is we use more stable and proven technologies. Well, we don't use really old technologies, but we are also very hesitate to use the very new technologies, because here in at least our startup, right, our goal is to build a really good top-notch, the best loyalty program management system in Hong Kong, based in Hong Kong but for the world, right? So that is the problem that we are trying to solve. And we are not trying to use the most advanced, the most exciting technologies. So that is not our goal. Another thing is that, well, so that is also related. We focus at our core, the problem that we are trying to solve. And we use third-party services wherever suitable. So these are the decisions that we make deliberately. So specifically, what we are using Python as the for the technology, right? For the language, we are using the Django web framework. We are using TaskQ, as the backend processing. We are using a lot of things, from AWS. Well, we really like AWS because, for example, we like RDS. If we don't use RDS, right, then we need to host our own database in our own server, right? And where can we find a really good DB admin in Hong Kong, right? So think about it, right? So we are using MySQL. So where can you find really top-notch, right? Have a lot of good experience around MySQL in Hong Kong. That is not impossible, but that is really hard to find one, right? But if you use, RDS, from AWS, right? And they use the best technologies, the best practice, right? How to run database, right? Then you can focus, then you can utilize your engineering team to focus at your own problem. We are using GitHub and we are using Jira for issue tracking. So another thing that I want to emphasize is running an engineering team, engineering processes is very important. When you have a team, well, right now we have a team of eight engineers. When we have, a team of engineers working together, right? We are not at university. We are not working on a pet project, right? So we are building a application for 3 years. We still have customers. 3 years ago use our application, they are still using our applications, right? So there are so many things. That you need to to keep track. You need to maintain your service. At really good quality, right? There are so many things that you need to care about. So engineering processes, is very important. And these 4 things, they are what we are using right now. Code review, design doc, automated testing, and continuous integration. But out of these 4 things, 4 processes, well, one process is more important than the others, and I would say code review. So we adopt code review from the very beginning. That is the practice that I learned from the startup that I work at, and as well as Google. As a startup, especially in the first 1 or 2 years, you can adopt all the processes. The more processes, you adopt, the more resources that you need to, or costs that you need to pay, right? And it may also slow down, the whole, the engineering, or the so. But one thing that I want to point out is code review is very important. We adopt it at the very beginning. The reason is that if you don't adopt code review, the code in your code repository can be really, really bad. and no one will know about like a time bomb, right? So if there's no code review, that means every developer, they can write their own code, and then they may, after they check in the code, they may do a demo to make to let everybody know that, oh, actually the function is working, right? But then you don't have any idea how it is working, what is the assumption that they are making, and how it may break, right? And frankly, if everybody is lazy, and everybody will just try to get their work done as soon as possible, right? And if somebody is going to look at my code, I may feel ashamed if I write code in certain way. Then actually the code review process itself can improve the code quality. And another very important reason is that knowledge sharing, right? So well, we are very lucky that not many our engineers leave the company, but everybody, every startup need to face the reality, right? No engineer or no staff will stay at the startup forever, right? And if you have code review, then in the code review, but at least other than the writer itself, another engineer understands the code, right? And then you can use this mechanism to share the knowledge across the whole engineering team. So I would say all the startup should implement a code review process from day one. And then the next process that we adopt is design doc. Design doc, that is what I have learned from Google. So I would say you may not need design doc. Probably in the first 1 or 2, probably not in the first 1 year, because you need to you need to be fast, right? You need to implement your system features and all that very fast, right? But after the first year, the system become more and more complicated. If you implement certain feature, actually there are many things that you need to consider. No, both on the product level as well as the technical level. So we adopt the design doc practice about 2 years ago. We don't write design doc, really long. Usually it is about like 5 pages. And in the design doc, we document all the technical decisions, important technical decisions that we made, and the explanation, the rationale behind it. Well, for example, when you implement this feature, you may need to change the database schema in certain way, right? Or you may need to add another backend process, right? So all these things we talk. Before we do the implementation, every engineer needs to write it down in the design doc and then circulate it before the actual implementation. And then 2 other things that we adopt recently is automated testing and continuous integration. Well, there are many resources out there talking about the benefit of automated testing and continuous integration, and I'm not going to talk about them here. What I want to emphasize is that actually if you adopt automated testing and continuous integration too early, then you may need to spend a lot of time to rewrite all the testings and then test cases so it is really a judgment call, okay, when you want to introduce into your engineering team. So there is no black and white decision here. So I want to talk about 3 lessons. After that I have learned. After running the engineering team for 3 years. So one thing is very important is that think what if things go wrong, okay? When you build a system, well, usually you don't think about these things, during the MVP phases. At that time, you need to focus, at the base use case, right? The adoption and all that, right? But once you are after that phase, you need to think about this as soon as possible. Many things can go wrong. As an engineer, everyone's code can, there can be bug, right? No one can say, oh, I'm writing bug-free code. Well, yes, you can. Maybe you can say that if you are writing really, really simple program. But if you are writing any program to solve any real problem, it is really hard to claim that. Another thing is production outage. So that is also a characteristic of SaaS, software as a service, because in the old world, in the world that Microsoft released, the Windows and OS, right? Once they sell the OS to you, then that is your responsibility to make sure your OS can run on your computer, right? But in the world of SaaS or the cloud computing, actually that is the responsibility of the service provider, that is us, to make sure what we are providing, it is running smoothly, right? And even, as big as AWS, right? AWS, that they have really high reliability, but even AWS, they have outage. And you need to think about what if your database is not accessible for, I don't know, an hour, or if there is a hardware failure, how you can recover from those failures so that you can provide your service again. Another thing that I want to emphasize that not many people talk about is customer mistakes. So when you build a web application, right? Well, nowadays, no customer will read pages of manual before using your software, right? We are talking about user user experience, the usability and all that, right? The customers, they are trained, to expect all the software. I don't need to read anything, and I can use it as soon as possible, right? And in many cases, actually, the customer, the assumptions that they are making may not be the assumptions that you are making, right? So, and there is always a gap between that. So when you design your software, when you implement your software, you need to take that into account. You need to take into account that, if a customer make a mistake, right? How severe is that mistake? Whether that mistake, will cost a lot of, I don't know, money, or of the customer, or it may cause a lot of brand damage, to your own startup. So these things, you need to consider when you implement your solution. So the second thing that we have learned after running the after 3 years, well, actually 1 or 2 years, is that data from third parties may not conform to the spec. Well, nowadays, there are so many APIs, that you need to use to retrieve data from here and there, right? And they have documentation. They will say, oh, what is the input, and then what is the output, what is the spec, all the data fields that you may receive in the response, right? And from our database, we do the auditing, and then actually some of the assumptions may not hold true. Okay, there are many reasons. One of the reasons is that the third parties that you are relying on, right? They may be also a startup, right? They may also change their change their spec all the time, right? they may also make mistakes. I mean, here and there, and they may lead to, I mean, violate, I mean, certain assumption or certain spec that they claimed before, right? And when you build a real system that real customers are using, you just need to take these into consideration. You just need, you cannot assume all the data they are in the perfect format. They are the spec is always like that. The spec can change, and you need to think about if the spec change, how you adjust your database or adjust your logic to handle those changes. The last thing I want to emphasize is documentation is very important. Okay, and here you can see the but you should not add unnecessary comments in code. Well, in the well, so I remember. I mean, when I was still in university. I mean, when I did an internship. Actually, in those days, I mean, engineers are encouraged to write a lot of comments in code itself. Okay. The reason is that, I mean, at that time, tools are not very sophisticated, and you embed most of the knowledge, I mean, most of your technical decisions in code itself, right? And they just add all those details and comments, I mean, in the code, right? But right now, there are so many, I mean, there are very convenient tools out there, right? For example, before you fix a bug, I mean, we use Jira, right? I mean, well, we use Jira to keep track of all the issues, right? Before we fix a bug, we have all our technical decisions, technical discussions, I mean, in the Jira, right? And then we implement our the solution or fixes. We have the code review process. We keep all the discussions, I mean, in the PR, in the pull request of GitHub, right? So here, when I say documentation is very important, actually, I'm saying the documentation that that you put in Jira and in at GitHub is very important. And what you need to make sure is that when you commit any code, the code has PR, I mean the pull request, so that when something bad happens, when you're trying to debug, and then when you look at the code history, right, and then you can reference the comments in the pull request and all the discussion in the pull request. And then from the pull request, you should also have a pointer back to the Jira issue that that pull request is trying to fix, so that you can keep all the discussions intact. I mean, when you do the debugging, you can keep going back to history, because when you have a product that has last, 3 years or even longer, you don't remember all the details. Yeah. And actually means something bad happened, and then we look at it, and then we ask around, and then anyone remember why we did something this stupid, this silly? I mean, at that time, no one remember, and you always need to go back to the Git history, and then you go back to the PR, and then you go back to the issue tracking. I mean, to see why you make those decisions, and that is very important, because if you don't understand all the decisions that you have made when you implement your solution, then when you try to fix your code, actually means that you are in a black box. You don't know what you are trying to fix. And we are hiring. So yeah, so that's it for my talk. And I saw that I have only 5 minutes left. So yeah, so any questions?
I had a question. When you said if you're doing a startup, most important thing in the beginning is the code review. So if you're like only have like 1 or 2 engineers, so I guess I'm just contrasting with the importance of like test-driven development, and you know, kind of like some people have schools of philosophy where you write the test first, which you know you have to write more code. But wouldn't that in itself produce better code as opposed to? I mean, I guess do you still? I mean, where will you rank that in terms of like the actual writing the test in terms of early on? I guess you know, doing it. Yeah.
Well, so the main point that I want to make here is that all these decisions, you need to think about the capability of your team. Okay. So you're right. I mean, if there's only one engineer, how can I do code review, right? Yeah. So what I'm saying here, I mean, it is only based on my experience. Yeah. So as a startup, right? I mean, everything. I mean, time, money, everything is limited, right? And just it is just based on my experience. Code review is one good process to keep the quality to certain. I mean, to certain quality, right? And it works for in my case, and I bet it worked for most startups, but not every startup. Yeah.
So are there any other questions?
Well, you said documentation is important, and you said this is one of the 4 things you could have done, got to be done in your company, according to your experience, right?
Yeah.
Are they done in any standard way, or no? You just do it manually?
When you say manually, what do you mean?
Just whatever way you like, or no? There's a fixed method or format you got to do it.
Oh yes. I mean, there is. I mean, as I said, right, I mean, when I say documentation, one key point is that you somehow you need to keep all the pointers, right? I mean, I mean, it is just like, okay, I mean, here's the line of the code, and you can reference back. I mean, okay, where is the discussion or in the PR? I mean, in the pull request in GitHub, and then you can also reference it back. I mean, to Jira, right? So the key point here is that, I mean, you can always link. I mean, have all the linkage in different. I mean, tools. So that is the key point. So there is certainly. I mean, when I run the engineering team, I mean, I define certain format. For example, when you check in, I mean, check in your code into Git, right? I mean, you need to, I mean, to put the, I mean, issue number or something like that. I mean, in certain format, so that everybody can use that format, and everybody can read in that format, right? But the key point is, I mean, that you need to keep all the linkage. Otherwise, when something bad happens, it is really hard to find those linkage if you don't have it in the first place.
Okay. Do you actually help with the loyalty campaigns for the merchants?
No, we are providing the product. So we are building the product that is a system, right? And it is one system for all the merchants. And certainly, I mean, there are some customization features that the merchants can use to customize their loyalty program that they want to run. But it is, well, so they use our tool to run their loyalty program.
So are there any other questions? Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chen.
Okay,